Welcome to the School of Education's Dr. Penny L. Hamrick Doctoral Student Colloquium Series presentation. I'm Larry Kaiser. I'm Program Director of the Creativity and Innovation Programs, including the Mind, Brain, and Learning Certificate, and Associate Director of the Freddie Reisman Center for Translational Research in Creativity and Motivation. And I will be the faculty moderator for this evening. We are so pleased to welcome all of our virtual attendees, including School of Education faculty, staff, and students, the university body at large, community members, and partner organizations, among others. The Colloquium series offers School of Education doctoral students and alumni an opportunity to share their original research and learn from their peers, faculty, and staff. Each month, one EDD and one PhD doctoral student or alum presents their research at the Colloquium. These sessions help current and previous doctoral students to connect with each other and develop a peer community that's invaluable in supporting their journeys throughout the program and beyond. Each doctoral student or alumni presenter is also asked to write a research brief that relates to their presentation, which is then included in an edited publication titled Doctoral Student Research Briefs, which is published on the School of Education's website. The research brief is a way to disseminate our doctoral students' research as shared in the colloquium in a concise format with relevance to education. Each presenter will be provided 20 minutes to share their presentation and their research. There will be a short questions and answers period following each presentation, so please jot down any questions that arise or come to mind during the presentation until that time. You are welcome to type your questions in the chat area of Zoom so not to lose it. And you'll be able to open your mic and ask questions during the questions and answers period. So let's begin. Our first speaker is Casey Hanna, who is a PhD student in the School of Education. Before pursuing her PhD, Casey was a public archaeologist and secondary school social studies teacher in Central Jersey. As a graduate research assistant at Drexel, she currently works in the Methods Lab with Dr. Tony May and Dr. Kristen Koski, and supports the Kids Writing Project led by Dr. Vera Lee. In addition, Casey assists in various research projects in the McNichol Early Childhood Education Lab with Dr. Michael Haslip and works with a research group of civics-related research topics. Her research includes program evaluation, student and community voice at community schools, and civic engagement and literacy. Today, Casey will present her presentation, which is entitled Evaluating the Impact of Pre-K Gardening Professional Development Program on Teachers' Instructional Use. Take it away, Casey.
Great, thank you. All right, let me share my screen. All right, can everyone see it? We're good? Awesome. All right, so good evening, and thank you, Dr. Kaiser, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. I'm really excited to share this research. As Dr. Kaiser said, I'm a research assistant in Drexel's Methods Lab, and I support various projects led by the lab's directors, Tony May and Dr. Kristen Koski. So I'd like to send a big thank you for their support, along with Dr. Kate Fan, who recently started a leadership role in the lab as well. So for tonight, I'm presenting on one small study from a much larger project titled Evaluating the Impact of a Pre-K Gardening Professional Development Program on Teachers' Instructional Use. I supported the qualitative research component of this mixed methods project, which is part of a larger program evaluation. I was a part of the team that analyzed and interpreted the qualitative data. I was also a part of the quantitative data input team. I plan on doing program evaluation for my dissertation, so supporting this research was really helpful as it really gave me experience in conducting an evaluation. So this work was supported by the National Institutes of Health SIPA program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed by myself does not reflect the views of the National Institutes of Health. Okay, so due to systemic inequities, Black and Latino populations in under-resourced urban neighborhoods are more likely to experience inadequate access to healthy food choices. For example, low-income Hispanic and non-Hispanic Black Philadelphians experience disproportionately low rates of access to healthy foods and high rates of food insecurity as a result of systemic socioeconomic inequities. And according to Feeding America, almost 1 in 4 children in Philadelphia lack access to food to support an active and healthy lifestyle. So to address this problem, Seeds to STEM, or S2S abbreviated, aims to empower young urban children between the ages of 3 and 5, their families and their teachers to make healthy food choices through culturally relevant, inquiry-based nutrition, STEM, literacy, and garden education. The Seeds to STEM curriculum was designed in alignment with Head Start Health and Next Generation Science Standards Early Childhood Learning Goals, and it has 16 inquiry-based lessons that are organized into 4 themes: food fundamentals, healthy choices, cycles in the garden, and community connections. So through this program, teachers participate in professional development, and professional development staff visit classrooms to model best pedagogical practices and support lessons. This intervention is currently being implemented in pre-K centers in Philadelphia and Los Angeles and is occurring in waves at these centers. The models of these pre-K centers vary from home-based models to public school to more corporate style centers, but all of the centers participating in the Seeds to STEM program serve low-income Black and Latino families with children between the ages of 3 and 5. So just a little bit more about the purpose of this research. Decades of research has shown that garden-based teaching and learning positively impacts academic achievement and social emotional outcomes. So Seeds to STEM builds on this research by offering PD programming that integrates current instructional best practices in pre-K inquiry-based STEM and literacy teaching and learning. This convergent mixed method study, which is part of a larger program evaluation, aimed to examine the impact of the Seeds to STEM professional development program on pre-K teachers' classroom instructional practices. So in this study, we asked 2 questions. Number 1, did pre-K teachers report significantly more frequent use of classroom instructional best practices across science, nutrition, mathematics, and literacy after participating in the Seeds to STEM PD? And the second question is, how did pre-K teachers describe the impact of Seeds to STEM on their classroom instructional practices? So the first question can be answered through quantitative data collection and analysis, and the second question can be answered through qualitative methods. Both questions aim to holistically understand the impacts of the Seeds to STEM PD on teacher instructional practices. So this was a one-phase convergent mixed methods research design where both the quantitative data, which was teacher surveys, and the qualitative data, which was teacher focus groups, were collected and analyzed. We then compared the analysis of the quantitative and qualitative data. For this presentation, I'm going to begin by discussing the quantitative data collection analysis and results before moving on to the qualitative collection analysis and findings. And then after these both are presented, I will discuss our interpretations based on data integration. So for the quantitative portion, a sample of 22 primarily female diverse pre-K teachers whose pre-K teaching experience ranges from 1 to 37 years participated in a retrospective pre-post survey. The survey measured teacher use of classroom instructional practices in science, nutrition, mathematics, and literacy before beginning the program and after the program was completed. So each survey item had a 4-point frequency scale where 1 was rarely or using practices 1 to 2 times a month or less, where 2 was sometimes or using practices 1 to 3 times a week. 3 was daily or using practices 4 to 5 times a week. And 4 was high frequency or using practices more than once a day. All the survey instruments in this study have undergone rigorous and iterative validation studies that used both qualitative and quantitative data sources to demonstrate high levels of content, response process, consequential, and internal structure validity. Evidence is aligning with the standards of educational and psychological testing. And after those surveys were collected and scored, the results were averaged and compared within content areas using dependent samples t-tests to look for growth in instructional practice use. So for the results for research question 1, the quantitative data analysis was really able to help us answer the question, did pre-K teachers report significantly more frequent use of classroom instructional best practices across science, nutrition, mathematics, and literacy after participating in the PD? So the results of the data analysis show that participants reported significantly more frequent use of classroom instructional best practices across all 4 content areas after participating in the PD. All of the effect sizes were large, with a range of 16.2 to 27 or 23.7% of the variance in classroom instructional practices growth reported due to Seeds to STEM professional development. There's a practical significance in growth for mathematics, science, and literacy, as pre-K teachers reportedly averaged using best practices sometimes before the PD to daily after the PD. Nutrition practices grew significantly as well. However, pre-K teachers indicated that they only had a continued use of sometimes both before and after the PD. So now for the qualitative data. We wanted to better understand how teachers describe the impacts of the PD, so we purposefully sought the perspectives of teachers who had participated in it. Seeds to STEM staff who worked directly with the pre-K teachers on program implementation assisted with focus group recruitment. Ultimately, we had a sample of 8 teachers across both urban areas of our study. And we designed structured, open-ended focus group questions to understand the impact of Seeds to STEM on teachers. These questions ask the teachers about their confidence, their perceived impacts of instructional practices on the students, and their selection of learning tasks across content areas. And once the focus group data was collected, myself and 2 other researchers conducted a group level analysis where we treated the focus group interview transcripts as main units of analysis. And we completed 2 cycles of coding. In cycle 1, each researcher independently read the transcripts and assigned codes by passage using in vivo coding when appropriate. Then the research team discussed the initial codes that we generated, and we refined our in vivo codes that were similar in meaning. And then in cycle 2, we completed a round of pattern coding where we finalized the codes. We grouped them into an overarching narrative that was around teachers' perspectives of Seeds to STEM. And then from that, 4 themes were identified, described, and reviewed by the researchers to ensure representation of the interview results. Okay, so ultimately, we found 4 themes that emerged from the qualitative data collection and analysis that describe the impacts of Seeds to STEM on teachers and classrooms participating in the program. We saw the first theme was increased resources for teachers. The second theme was increased exposure to hands-on learning experiences. The third theme was modeled how to integrate the domains. And the 4th and final theme was positive impact on teacher outcomes. What's also interesting is that these themes interact with each other. For example, by providing teaching and learning materials, which is theme 1, the students and teachers had increased exposure to foods, plants, and animals through hands-on learning experiences, which is theme 2. And in turn, students were more willing to try new things, They asked questions about what they were experiencing, and they had an increased interest in what they were learning. And Seeds to STEM program staff modeling best instructional practices in pre-K teachers' classrooms, which is theme 3, impacted teachers' knowledge in the content areas and also impacted their teaching confidence, which is theme 4. So I just want to talk about each theme a bit more in depth. Theme 1, increased resources for teachers, shows how the Seeds to STEM program provided teaching and learning materials to the under-resourced classrooms participating in the program. This includes tools for the teachers and resources for the students. Those resources go beyond just providing fresh fruits and vegetables. They also were providing literacy tools that integrated nutrition and math and science into what the students were learning. And during the focus groups, teachers discussed the quantity and quality of the tools and resources that the PD programming provided to them in their classrooms. So for theme number 2, increased exposure to hands-on learning experiences, this theme shows how the program increased teacher and student access to engaging and hands-on learning experiences. Many teachers described in the interviews how many of their students did not have access to healthy fruits and vegetables at home, but they were exposed to these through the Seeds to STEM program. And this exposure increased student interest across areas, especially when it came to trying new things like eating an exotic fruit or gardening. Teachers shared how excited the students were by these experiences and how they were asking many questions in relation to the content. Teachers also displayed a willingness to try out integration strategies modeled by the PD facilitators after seeing the effect of these strategies on student engagement and learning. And then theme 3, modeled how to integrate the domains, shows how the PD facilitators effectively modeled for teachers how to integrate content areas in their teaching practices in new and innovative ways. Teachers shared in the interviews that PD instructors demonstrating how to integrate content areas and how to use the resources provided for them in the classroom was really impactful for them. And then the last theme, theme 4, positive impact on knowledge, attitudes, and learning, shows how the modeling approach resulted in positive teacher outcomes. Some teachers discussed how much more confident they felt when teaching certain activities after participating in the PD. Others described how the program changed their outlook on science instruction and that the program brought more of a focus on science and expanded the instructional strategies that they already had in their toolbox. Some of them also discussed an increase in their knowledge around STEM and nutrition content areas as well. All right. So when considering the quantitative results and the qualitative findings, they suggest a strong and meaningful impact of Seeds to STEM on urban pre-K teachers' use of best instructional practices across Philadelphia and LA. This is especially encouraging because Seeds to STEM is in its early stages of programming. This data was collected at the end of year 2 of programming. So to see the results and findings like this is really encouraging. The results show a significant increase in teachers' use of science, mathematics, nutrition, and literacy best practices after they participated in the Seeds to STEM PD. And the findings indicate that the increase in instructional use across these content areas is in part due to Seeds to STEM PD providing instructional support, access to new resources and experiences, and modeling approaches for how to effectively implement these resources in the classroom. Many teachers don't have the support to teach inquiry-based STEM and nutrition lessons at all, or if they are able to teach it, they're really only able to implement these lessons during mealtime due to various barriers that can manifest at like the interpersonal level, the intrapersonal level, and the institutional level. So it's encouraging to see that this work is in part fulfilling this need and addressing those issues. So there are a few limitations and delimitations that I want to discuss. For the quantitative component, it's important to note that retrospective pre-post surveys can be susceptible to social desirability. However, rigorous validation studies of the instrument have ensured that it demonstrates high levels of validity. It's also important to note that this design helps avoid response shift bias, which is when a participant uses a different frame of understanding about a question between the pre and post periods. And for the qualitative research, it's important to note that the researchers' presence during the focus groups may have affected the participants' responses. And this is, unfortunately, often unavoidable in qualitative research. However, I think our analytical approach was a good approach to assuage this issue. Okay, so what do we do with these findings? From a practical perspective, the results from this study will be used to modify Seeds to STEM PD materials and lessons in the hopes of promoting even greater pre-K teacher implementation and confidence. And hopefully future dissemination of this work can influence how similar programs approach literacy, STEM, and nutrition professional development programming in early childhood classrooms. And as I mentioned on a previous slide, we and other researchers have noted that teachers experience barriers to implementing nutrition instruction. In a future study, we hope to gather a new perspective on this through interviews with experienced PD facilitators, and we've already begun to collect data on this now. These are my references. And thank you. That's it. Thank you all for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Very interesting. And this is the point where we will take questions. Don't put anything in the chat. So if you have a question, you feel free to unmute. And Michael, if you want to just sing out, feel free to do that. I see you put a question just now in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, the question I put in the chat is, can you talk a little bit more about the collaborative nature of your qualitative coding process?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. We met a lot between, I guess, the first phase of coding, the in vivo coding phase, and then the pattern coding phase. When we met and talked with each other, we did the coding independently. But then once we came together, we really, made sure that all of us were noticing the things that we were noticing. We wanted to make sure that there was alignment between the three of us and the things that we were seeing. And we wanted to make sure that we were capturing that as best as possible. So even though we had only 2 phases of coding, we've met well more than 2 times. I would say we probably met 6 to 7 times to really talk it through.
Casey, a question for you that I have. In terms of the post, how long after the PD did you do the post? Was it shortly after, or was it long-term after?
So I was not involved in the quantitative data collection. I'll write your question down and I'll make sure I get that question to someone who can answer that for you.
Okay, I mean, because my follow-up question would be, if it was short-term, is there plans to do actually go back to the same group again to see whether it really took hold? Are they repeating it? Do the findings you have carry through over the course of time, or is it just a result of that one-shot PD? For that
No, so I think what's great about the nature of this program is that it's being implemented in waves. And even though, the classroom that received the intervention year one, even though they might be done with the intervention at the end of year one, they're still really involved with the program. I'm not entirely sure what the data collection plan is for those classrooms that have completed the intervention, and that we've already collected post data. But that would definitely be because, there's multiple stages of intervention per pre-K center. That would be an easy population to go back to and revisit that and see what the longitudinal effects of the PD programming would be.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Casey at this time? Going once, twice, three times. Thank you so much, Casey. If you would then share your screen, and we'll go on to our next presentation. Our second speaker is Dr. William London Thompson, an alum of the EDD program. Dr. Thompson is professor of educational leadership, currently serving as an adjunct faculty at Purdue Global University and Hampton University. He is a Philadelphia native and proud graduate, as well as a new grant manager at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in education administration, and more recently from Drexel University from the EDD and educational leadership and management with a concentration in athletic administration, which he received in spring of 2023. His higher education experience informs a multifaceted research agenda with the overarching goal of advancing knowledge and catalyzing positive change across various aspects of society. This includes elevating the higher education experience, bridging educational transitions, empowering student athletes, addressing racial disparities in college athletics, and advocating for equity through critical theory. London is currently pursuing a certificate in school management and leadership at Harvard Business School. Additionally, he has received funding to complete certification in applied DEI from the Brown School of Professional Studies starting in February of this year. In addition to his academic pursuits, London is the father of 5 sons and actively contributes to the athletics community. He serves as the head coach for boys track and field, and as the wide receivers coach at Punua. I got London helping.
Punua School.
Thank you. In Honolulu, Hawaii. Today, London's presentation is entitled Unmasking Barriers, Unleashing Potential, a phenomenological study on academic advisors' implementation of critical support systems for Black male student athletes' academic success. Take it away, London.
Greetings, everyone. I want to give a shout out to Stephanie Smith-Budai and my other guys, Christopher Lucas and Dr. Kia Soglas, for changing my life and riding with me as I completed my dissertation at Drexel. I will be forever grateful to you all. So thank you. And it's an honor to be back with my Drexel family today and just share a little bit about my dissertation journey. So here we go. So my journey towards conducting this research began during the initial weeks of my master's program in 2017 at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, when my professor, Dr. Chris Lucas, shared an article written by Sean Harper. This article, along with the references it provided, sparked my interest and set me on a disturbing path. The first thing I learned was that in 2019, the NCAA's total collected revenue was $19 billion, and that athletes received no compensation outside of scholarships. The next thing I learned was that in spite of these scholarships, the majority of FBS college athletes are living below the poverty line. I also learned who these student athletes were when research suggested that Black men made up just 2.4% of the undergraduate population at Power 5 schools, but comprise 55% of their football teams and 56% of men's basketball teams. I also learned that the financial incentives to cheat are very real, as evidenced by the University of North Carolina's almost 2-decade fake degree program, ironically called African and Afro-American Studies. So my explorations focused in on understanding the dynamic and structure of the athlete-advisor relationship, a relationship that is conceived and conducted under NCAA-mandated student-athlete academic support services programs, SASS, leading me to a central problem. Black male student-athletes at predominantly white institutions are funneled through student-athlete academic support services programs where advisors primarily focus on maintaining NCAA eligibility as opposed to degree completion, which is detrimental to their academic identity development. So the purpose of this qualitative phenomenological study was to explore the lived experiences of academic advisors within SASS programs at predominantly white institutions to understand how they perceive their role in supporting the academic identity development and degree completion of Black male student athletes. So this study is significant because it explored the inner workings and purposes of student athlete academic support services from the perspective of the advisors themselves. And this study also provides an in-depth understanding of how academic advisors describe their role in supporting Black male student athletes within these programs. And in addition, this research successfully addressed the gap in the knowledge base supporting further development of academic advising as a field of study, specifically the discipline of advising Black male student athletes. So to investigate this phenomenon, I conducted a semi-structured interviews. I conducted a focus group, and I also maintain a researcher's journal. This study was guided by one overarching central research question and two sub-questions. The research question was, how do academic advisors who support Black male student athletes as part of a student athlete academic support services program at predominantly white institutions describe their lived experiences? And the sub-question one is, how do academic advisors describe the challenges they face in supporting the academic identity development of Black male student athletes at predominantly white institutions? And the sub-question two is, how do social justice frameworks inform advising practice within SAS programs at predominantly white institutions? So 3 interconnected modes of thought supported the conceptual framework for this study: college student development theory, advising practice, and critical race theory. All right, so NACADA member institutions in the United States are organized into 10 distinct regions, okay? So what I did was I selected 2 NCAA Division I schools from each region as a target population. The regional schools were selected for their ability to provide information-rich information. So if I was in a region and I had to choose between, I don't know, a smaller school and the University of Alabama, I wanted to choose the University of Alabama. I figured it was a bigger program. They've got better funded SASS situation. So I feel like I would get more information out of that. Okay. So to participate in this study, the academic advisors had to have at least 1 year of advising experience at a predominantly white NACADA member institution. NACADA is a an organization that academic advisors are a member of, basically. Um, they needed to provide academic advising services to Black male student athletes who participate in an NCAA Division I revenue generating sport. And they needed to primarily work as part of a student athlete academic support services program. Okay. All right, so as you can see, I assigned each participant a pseudonym and removed all identifying information. This study included a total of 8 participants, consisting of 6 females and 2 males. Among them, 5 participants identified as white, while 3 identified as Black. 7 of the 8 participants held leadership positions in student athlete academic support services. And both Logan and Hayden took part in the semi-structured interview and the focus group, and Avery, Quinn, Ryan, Rowan participated solely in the semi-structured one-on-one interviews. And then Emery and Parker, on the other hand, shared their experiences exclusively as part of the focus group. 6 of the participants had more than 10 years of experience in student athlete academic sport, with one individual boasting over 15 years of experience. And the age range of participants varied from 26 to 60. And furthermore, 6 of the 8 academic advisors had prior experience as college athletes. All participants had completed a master's degree, and one participant was currently pursuing a doctorate. Okay, so the verbatim transcripts were coded using in vivo software. And through this analysis, 3 key themes emerged: the positionality, the work, and the theoretical basis for practice. Verbatim transcripts of the interview sessions were coded using in vivo software, and the findings were derived from the narrative shared by the participants. I employed an inductive approach to the thematic analysis, where the initial codes were developed by the narratives provided by the respondents. The coding approach encompassed both semantic and latent practices aiming to capture the literal words expressed by the participants, but also exploring the deeper meanings, experiences, and context within the data. All right. So the themes that emerged from the data supported the development of 4 key results that connect to the research questions and the existing literature that guided this phenomenological study. And these results are significant as they provide a foundation for the conclusions and the recommendations that were presented in my chapter 5. So my first result, result 1, was that despite diversity efforts, student athlete academic support services professional staff and leadership remain predominantly white and female, while the athletes they serve are predominantly Black and male. All 8 study participants described their leadership as overwhelmingly white and female. For example, Emery said, "Because of the community that we live in, it's literally hard to be a person of color here. I'm not going to sugarcoat that." This result agrees with the demographic data from the National Academic Advising Association that suggests 57% of the membership identifies as white and 10% identifies as Black, while 67% identifies as female. The study participants described reasons for these demographic disparities, including unwelcoming environments, a limited applicant pool, and competition with student athlete development. Okay. Result 2, PWIs routinely admit academically underprepared student athletes who are advised through a separate advising track called Student Athlete Academic Support Services. So this process agrees with what research has suggested is a commonplace activity called special admissions, a way through which student athletes who do not meet admission requirements are admitted. The majority of the students, of the study participants described their SAS program as being under the authority of the athletics department, and that special admits were a significant source of what they classify as at-risk student athletes. Okay. And result 3 is due to the professionalism and transitory nature of revenue generating sports like football and basketball, student athlete academic support services advisors are often forced to prioritize eligibility over academic identity development and degree completion. The study participants described a college football and basketball as highly professionalized, noting that these athletes are extremely busy and have little time outside of athletic participation. The academic advisors reported it was necessary to structure a student athlete's academic load based on their in-season or off-season participation, but often this practice was ineffective in supporting on-time degree completion. 3 of the 6 advisors who participated in the one-on-one interview described the increasing prevalence of athletes transferring in and out and how this transfer culture increased the academic loads for incoming student athletes and hindered others from graduating on time. 2 academic advisors described instances where athletes had transferred in and out in a single semester. In addition, all of the study participants described athletes who were obsessed with going pro, resulting in the athletes making what they called football decisions. One advisor described an instance where a Black male student athlete was requesting a transfer with just 1 class left to complete his degree requirements. And result number 4. Although all of the study participants reported some exposure to theory during their graduate studies, theory does not play advisors' stated academic journeys to just all of the study participants were exposed to developmental theories as part of their graduate studies. But despite this, the data suggests most of the study participants were unable to define identity development or claim social justice as a theoretical basis for their daily practice. I'll just leave that there. Moving on. I found that to be extraordinary. That was an extraordinary point there. Okay, so moving on to my conclusions. The conclusions for this study connect to the research questions that drove this study, as well as the findings of the study, which were just presented. So my first research question was, how do academic advisors who support Black male student athletes as part of a student athlete academic support services program at a predominantly white institution describe their lived experience? So the academic advisors who participated in this study described a racialized system of college athletics that was moving away from an academic mission towards a more professionalized model that prioritized athletic participation over degree completion and graduation. It was also noted that the majority of the student athletes they served were predominantly Black and male, while the advisors themselves were mostly white and female. The advisors faced challenges such as unclear credit transfer rules, clustering student athletes into limited degree paths, and discouraging certain educational pursuits that might interfere with athletic commitments. They struggled to implement long-term developmental plans due to the chaotic nature of the system. The advisors also had to contend with the myth of full ride scholarships that drove decision-making for underprivileged Black male student athletes, leading them to transfer in hopes of better athletic opportunities, even in the middle of their college careers. The advisors recognized the importance of highly engaging and individualized programming to support success, but they also highlighted the performative nature of their own professional development and the lack of focus on race, equity, and inclusion in both advisor training and student athlete engagement. All right, almost done here. So research question A was, how do academic advisors described the challenges they face in supporting the academic identity development of Black male student athletes at predominantly white institutions. So the thematic analysis of this study revealed that the advisors played a crucial role in supporting both the athletic department and the academic mission of the universities they worked at. However, they faced several challenges in their work. One significant challenge was the lack of diversity in leadership and professional staff, with a majority being white and female, while student athletes they served were predominantly Black. The study participants recognized the need for more diversity in leadership positions and highlighted factors, including unwelcoming work environments. Another challenge was identifying and supporting at-risk student athletes, mainly in football and basketball. The advisors used various assessment tests to screen for learning disabilities and provided additional support based on a student's individual needs. They emphasized the importance of academic mentors and early engagement to help these at-risk students succeed, and a holistic approach that considered external factors like home life and personal distractions was also seen as essential. And there was also discussion about low pay and lack of appreciation. And research sub-question B was, how do social justice frameworks inform advising practice within SES programs at predominantly white institutions? So the data for this study indicated that social justice frameworks did not explicitly inform the practice of the advisors at these predominantly white institutions. All right, but it's not all bad. However, further analysis revealed that the advisors had developed kind of like a personal practice that demonstrated a commitment to social justice and anti-racist practices. They saw themselves as advocates for the students. They supported and employed an intrusive advising approach to promote academic identity development and degree completion for Black male student athletes. So they kind of had their own informal theory, but they didn't really feel like they were really kind of using it as a jumping off of anything that they learned from grad school. Okay. So now I want to discuss the recommendations, and then I will close us out. All right. So I have 4 recommendations. The first recommendation is that top-level university leadership should prioritize diversity and inclusion in the hiring process to ensure their most at-risk populations, who are overwhelmingly Black and male student athletes, receive the support they need. The participants literally described athletes requesting, hey, are we going to get some advisors that look like us? We heard Matt got fired, or that he's leaving. Are you going to bring in another guy that looks like him, or what's the next guy going to look like? We really would like a guy that looked like Dave. The athletes making requests like that. The study participants' explanations for lack of Black males in crucial leadership and advising roles describe the student athlete support system focused on implementing front-facing initiatives, but resistant to addressing much needed internal changes necessary to facilitate a diverse workforce. Some study participants expressed feelings of powerlessness, which illustrates the need for a top-down initiative that supports the diversity and inclusion needs of their employees and students. Not going to linger on that too much. Recommendation 2, athletic programs, recruiters and coaches should involve the SES advisors in the recruiting process to vet potential recruits with consideration of their academic dispositions. Some academic advisors know they often don't know which student athletes are coming to campus until they formally sign their national letters of intent. They describe situations where elite athletes committed to their programs without ever having contact, resulting in unfavorable academic and athletic outcomes. SES programming and athletic recruitment should work in concert to identify and recruit student athletes that are most likely to succeed in their programs. Okay. And my next recommendation is, in consideration for the academic implications of student athletes transferring from one institution to another, policymakers should work with NCAA member institutions to create a standardized 4 to 6 year student athlete degree paths and waive residency requirements. Now, this might sound sort of controversial, but this is my idea, okay? Current NCAA transfer policies notes that in all sports, 4-year undergraduate student athletes who decide to transfer to a new NCAA school can generally be eligible to compete in the new school year, provided that they have not previously transferred and notify their current school by entering the NCAA transfer portal. Despite its widespread acceptance, this policy raises concerns about how it will affect a student athlete's ability to graduate. For example, misalignment between institutions may result in some classes not being accepted at the new institution. Okay, I'm at 20 minutes already. So I think I'm going to stop here.
Okay, I'd like to hear the rest, but if you
Okay, good. Can I go?
please.
Awesome. Okay, so recommendation 4. Because of the valuable work SS advisors perform in support of vulnerable student athlete populations, their practice should be informed by an intimate knowledge and dependence on theory. And I mean this, I really feel like if you're going to be an academic advisor, really you should be basing your work off of, you should have some theoretical basis for what you're doing. You shouldn't be kind of figuring out as you go. And positionality refers to the social, cultural, historical, and political factors that shape an individual's perspective. It includes an understanding of one's social location and how it influences interactions and relationships with others. So the thematic analysis of the narrative shared by each study participant suggests that the positionality of the advisors was the most influential factor in how each advisor perceived their role in supporting the academic identity development and degree completion of the athletes they serve. So therefore, the advisors must see theory as primarily a reflexive tool that helps the advisor change their own behaviors to meet the needs of the person that they're advising, rather than a means of making a diagnosis of anyone. This is what is implied when the recommendations of the study suggest advisors have an intimate knowledge and dependence on theory as a basis for practice. In other words, academic advisors must have an innate knowledge of themselves and how what they're bringing to their work affects their work and how they, okay. Oh, okay. Moving on. So there are several limitations to the study. Firstly, there were sample limitations wherein the study sample group consisted of academic advisors with specific criteria, limiting the generalizability of the results to other populations. Another limitation was transferability, where the findings are not generalizable across all populations. Even so, the study's findings may not be generalizable. They do have transferable implications in other contexts and settings. Furthermore, another limitation was the small sample size. As a qualitative investigation, this study sample size is insufficient for statistical measurement. This study relied on personal interviews and the participants' descriptions of their unique life, world, and experiences. And this dynamic makes it challenging to apply their participant experiences broadly across different groups and situations. And lastly, another limitation was how the analysis was conducted. I used thematic analysis, which was influenced by my own subjective interpretations and value-related choices that I made when making the themes. And lastly, there was a significant limitation in time as completing this for my doctoral dissertation, which was done over a period of several months. I kind of rushed through the end, but I am finished, and that went by really fast. Thank you for your time.
It does and does, and thank you so much, Lennon. That was wonderful. Fascinating. Are there any immediate questions? We have a few moments for them if you do. If so, unmute and sing out. I know that my personal question was, because I used to advise athletes in Drexel's basketball program. What is your solution? That's for, do you think that the same thing happens at the non NCAA level? Is it higher education wide, or is it just at the larger institutions? This is an issue where money is involved.
I think it's higher education wide, but as the money increases, the the tendency to skimp on this, the tendency to focus more on athletic participation rather than academic success is as you go higher up, right? More on the higher levels. Um, Unfortunately, there is a gap, right, happening coming from the K through 12. I mean, you got these extraordinary athletes coming through K through 12 who've already been, I mean, I hate to say that, I don't want to make those assumptions, but we do know that there are athletes who are quote unquote on an athlete track and they're coming out of high school and they're already arriving to campus underprepared. And it's for a lot of different reasons. One of the main reasons is because uh, the inequities in the education system, right? In the public school system, where students in lower income areas is where you're getting these great athletes, but the actual exposure to certain levels of academics is not as equitable. So there's definitely a gap between K through 12. And so these academic advisors are already getting guys who are, you know, have a lack of exposure. I don't think that they can't do it. It's just they haven't been exposed to these things in their K through 12. And so that sets them up to already have issues coming in, their freshman year.
Thank you. Are there any questions for London? Going once?
Yeah, no, I have a question if I could ask, please.
Please do.
Yeah, great. So when you were talking about the limitations, and you mentioned about the way that you designed, you said semi-structured interviews. Can you talk a little bit more about why you chose that?
Yeah, so it's semi-structured interviews where basically I've got some sort of a framework set up, meaning that I know what questions I'm going to ask, but I don't have to answer all of them, and I don't have to ask the questions in a certain order. And what I'm doing is I'm sort of creating this conversation, and then as the conversation is going, then what I'm going to do is I'll interject with a question if I need to redirect it to something, or if I want to dig a little deeper on a subject. So the discussions are designed to be open-ended, but it's semi-structured, meaning that I've already decided in general what questions I'm going to ask. So what I did was I kind of organized the questions I was going to ask based on uh, how are they related to my research question, right? So I aligned my questions that I was going to ask based on how they were going to answer my research questions.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Betts.
Yeah, first of all, it was an outstanding presentation. I enjoyed it. Your detail was exceptional. So what are your plans? Are you going to be going to different conferences, articles? I know you kind of touched on that, but I can only imagine with NCAA upcoming conferences or NASPA, NACADA. I mean, it lends itself to so many different contexts.
Yeah, I gotta start writing some papers and doing some stuff. But when I started doing this research and talking about this, everyone thought I was crazy. They were like, "What are you talking about? Athletes, NCAA, all this different stuff." And now it's just all over the news, because I mean, eventually the inequity of making 19 billion, but David's not graduating. Like you said, that his compensation was his scholarship, but he didn't graduate, but you still got your 19 billion. So I don't understand what are we doing here? And that really struck me. I'm a former athlete myself, and that really struck me that the professionalism that's happening in athletics, I don't think it's wrong, but at the same time, what about the academics? Aren't they supposed to be in school to get their education? And what is the role of these academic advisors playing in that? Like, what I mean is like, how are they thinking about these athletes? Are they having high goals for these guys, or are they just, hey, let's just get these guys through type of a vibe? What are the expectations for them? And I got to tell you that the academic advisors I interviewed guys from Oklahoma, Clemson, Alabama. These people were awesome. Some people from some HBCUs. They were all very passionate people who were driven to do great work. But because of the system that they're working in, they're definitely hamstrung because they're understaffed and they don't have the resources they need. So you've got this 19 billion, but there's where's the resources to actually get these guys through? So.
Well, I would encourage you this spring to look for the conferences, like the calls come out for NASPA, NACADA, and all of those. Work on the articles, but I think with your ability to just communicate on such an important topic with your amazing sample, I think you're just going to have packed rooms at these conferences.
Oh, wow. Okay, now let's make that happen. Let's go. Let's from your mouth to God's ears.
And I concur. But on that, I want to thank you again, Dr. London Thompson, as well as our other presenter, Casey Hanna, for presenting today. I also want to thank all of you for attending the Colloquium event series. FYI, the remainder of the 23-24 Colloquium series will now be available on the first Monday of the month from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And our next Colloquium event will be held on Monday, February 5th, and we hope to see you then. Good night.
Right. Thank you.